you asked a very fundamental question. So, yes, if you are represented in the board of KEMSA, and the board is the one that recruits the CEO of KEMSA, was the board then right to allow one of its board members sit in the board, fire CEO of KEMSA, develop the job description for the next CEO of KEMSA, resign from the board of KEMSA, and the same board hires the same officer now as the CEO of KEMSA? You, as a state parliament representative there, and you, as the oversight of that saga, was that quite in order? Was that in accordance with the governance rules of sagas?
Thank you, Chair. You know that I always agree with you. They are the laid down responsibilities of the board. We have parameters within which they must operate. And that does not mean that certain boards don't go wrong. Because they are human beings, they can decide to flout the law. And when that happens, it's usually we have the laid down mechanisms of, investigation and knowing who people are and that kind of thing. Remember, the CEO that I found had been employed when I came in. And I only stayed there for 6 months. We were working on very many things, and of course the investigations as to why that happened was still going on. Right? So my representation, therefore, at that particular time, when that happened, wasn't there. Because then I wasn't there at that particular moment when that happened. I submitted there.
But PS, government does not work that. And when you inherit an office, you inherit both the benefits and the problems that accrue from that office. So, are you telling then this committee that the ministry actually then failed in their oversight responsibility, and you are in the process of correcting that failure?
Chairman, like I said, when we have rules and code of regulations. When employing a CEO of an organization like that one, we must follow those regulations to the letter. And we have things like Mogoza and the rest of them. When that happened, I was not a PS then within that ministry. And therefore, when that came to our knowledge, right, that this had happened, we had put in place mechanisms now to follow through and identify the gaps that then happened. And remember, when you look at the history of KEMSA, we came in and the board was not well constituted and all that was happening. Right? So, whether I was involved in that, the answer is no. Whether we took action, we were already doing the investigation to understand why that would have happened.
Senator, you can proceed.
Thank you, Chair.
That's
quite okay. PS Tum, were you aware of a letter dated 21st February 2023 written by the Adjustment Board to KEMSA informing KEMSA on inconsistency in the tender specifications and seeking clarity on that? Were you aware of that letter which was written?
Chair, I wasn't. Because that letter was not copied to me.
Did you receive any formal communication regarding the decision by KEMSA to extend the tender advertisement?
No, because it wasn't copied to me if a letter was written.
Maybe at this point I would ask you, PS, what is the role of the representative from your department in the board of KEMSA?
There are certain aspects of management and administration chair that are vested in management. And I would want to imagine that when it comes to issues procurement, when it comes to issues discipline, when it comes to issues specifications, those are not things that are normally brought to the board, because the board is oversight. It's not operational in nature. The board only receives some of this information if there is a problem. And therefore then, my representative might not have been in the know on the issues of day-to-day running management until such is then brought to the board. Right? Because the board is just oversight.
Thank you. This committee was informed that there was a letter written by the Cabinet Secretary, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Health. The letter was written to the CEO of KEMSA, instructing her to only communicate with your office at the State Department of Medical Services to the exclusion of Dr. Bolu, Principal Secretary, State Department of Public Health and Professional Studies Standards. Were you aware of this letter, which was written by the Cabinet Secretary to the CEO of KEMSA?
Chair, I was not aware of a letter that was written by the Cabinet Secretary to the CEO. Right. Because like I stated earlier, KEMSA, for lack of a better word, is just like a market, a supermarket. Right. It is only that that supermarket is under somebody else's department, but anybody can do procurement. So it will be the responsibility of the other PS, whenever they wanted to buy malaria commodities, to communicate directly by giving them specifications. Whenever I wanted also to do a procurement through KEMSA, I would do the same. The National Treasury would also do the same. And like I said, AMREF and the rest of them will do the same. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, PS. So is it, in my understanding, that your submission to this committee is that as PS Medical Services, you had no role whatsoever in the procurement of the Global Fund?
Sorry. Come back.
Okay. My question is, your submission to this committee is that you had no role whatsoever in the malaria procurement by Global Fund. Yet, as a committee, we've been informed, and as per your submission, the role of KEMSA was squarely on your department. As far as the malaria procurement was concerned, was there any role that your department played whatsoever?
Chair, let me come back again to what I said. We didn't have any role as a department. And like I've explained, when it comes to procurement, you define as a department what you want. And once you've had that definition, you define it again in accordance to the funding that you have, right? So the role and responsibility of the department is to do the definition once they have realized that they have the funding, because that is government procurement mechanism. And number two is that you provide the specifications of that you want, right? So it is either in your department and therefore you provide that, or it is not and you don't provide anything, right? And the kind of communication that we normally do in government is through writing. So if I wanted to buy an HIV/AIDS commodities, what I would do is that my team within my department would define the requirements in terms of specifications and what is needed. And then I would sign a letter that goes to cancer. That would be for my department. The same would happen to National Treasury, the same would happen to AMREF and the rest of them. Right? So on this specific one, my department was not involved. Thank you.
Yet you received an email from Global Fund terminating the procurement. What was your feeling once you received that email?
My feeling?
Maybe let's allow me to put a supplementary question on that, Senator Haji. So, upon appears, your State Department is not involved in this procurement process. But then, Global Fund, on termination, decides to write to you from the blue. Or was it an email that was misdirected, was supposed to go there? Or is it an official one email address for the ministry that then is being used by everybody?
The Chair, in addition to what you're actually asking, on the same one appears, what was your department represented in that meeting where Global Fund was, and the other stakeholders where conciliation of this tender was actually done? Because I'm thinking, why would they then communicate to you if you did not have any representation in that meeting? And for your information, we have no minutes showing we have no minutes showing whatever was agreed, but every other person we've spoken to in this inquiry makes comments in regard to that meeting in Naivasha. In Naivasha really, but yeah. Okay, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll just answer all questions together. On same. Global Fund, I say it provides funds for malaria, commodities, HIV/AIDS commodities, TB commodities, and I don't know which other. Right? TB and malaria were under the State Department for professional standards. Okay. HIV/AIDS were under myself. Right? So whenever anything came, there is a mailing list that is standard for the Global Fund. Right? So when any issue comes that deals with whatever, you will get the email as copied to National Treasury, because the principal recipient. They are copied to the Ministry of Health, both PSS and everybody else. Right? So it is not like they had to write to me as PS Medical Services at that particular moment, as a legitimate. It was within the mailing list, right? And therefore, then even the CS National Treasury received the same information. The CS Health received the same information, the same email. I received the same email because it is in the mailing list. Global Fund deals with all of us together. Thank you.
Senator Amira, you have something?
It seems like we invited both PS Tum, Engineer Tum, and Dr. Mulo, who had no role in this issue. Because looking at, everyone has a disclaimer that, okay, everything we went on, but then we never had any role. But I just wanted to ask One PS. I think the first question Haji asked is that was there anything, me I call it Kizungu in this thing, because you realize Dr. Omar did a letter and advising that there was a missing link in the specs. Then that letter does not get to Dr. Muller, but then it gets to the PS and it's advertised. And only Dr. Muller sees it in the newspaper. There's no communication in between. And only where he is now is when he realizes that all these communications were going on. And I'm also sure, I think, sorry I came a bit late, that you also saw, after it was re-advertised. So surely this global tender was how many days? It's a lot of money, right? But then you can imagine within the same department, everyone else says it wasn't me. It wasn't me, it didn't come to me, and then, it only... So it was more or less, like there was a conveyor belt, but then at the end of the day, this thing was extended. So I'm just wondering, what mischief was this on a PS? Because it seems there's a vacuum, there's some place where we are not really understanding, because why was this thing extended, and yet the same specs was the same specs re-advertised and nothing was included again. And yet, according to Dr. Omar, there's something wrong, the specs, and that's every reason why it was re-advertised. So surely, who is fooling who here? Because it's, to me, I'm perplexed, to me, I'm a bit, so kindly, Bwana PS, now that you are here, tusaidia tu kidogo, tufafanue tuweze kuelewa, because you also have Dr. Muller, which we cornered him the other time, and we asked him several questions, and he was with Dr. Omar. And in between again, there was still some, that lacuna in the room that we didn't really understand other issues, because everyone says, sio mimi, ilipita. So it's something that, because out there, Kenyans want to understand. Kenyans want to know, they all want to know what went wrong. Because the president was involved by doing the necessary, of course, and some people, they suffered the consequence. So surely, maybe according to, because we are lay people, we are trying to understand. We're not maybe legal persons, but then we want to really understand this so that at least we can be knowledgeable and understand it better. Thank you. Yes.
Yes.
Chair, I didn't really understand the question.
Well, the question is, I'm saying, if since both Dr. Mulwa and you are saying you are not involved, then who was involved in this issue? That's what I'm saying, because if we also, this was a big tender, it was advertised, then Omar says, Mulwa says he didn't, he wasn't involved in the re-advertisement, the advertisement was done. I think I've explained all that.
Okay.
So I'm just asking,
Who was involved?
exactly.
Thank you, Chair. Now I understand. Honorable Senator, I have given my submission on the questions that I was asked. I have stated my roles and responsibilities within that aspect of what you are investigating. So now, if I'm asked who was involved, I may not really be sure, because I think the reason then we are sitting here is just to find out what happened. And I have really stated what happened in regards to my department. So I may not be able to state it. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hesse.
Yes, to the chair. I would like to find out, because the issues we are looking at here are governance issues. And Engineer Tum, and like your counterpart, you've been very economical and measured in your words. I do not want to imagine like completely having a representative in that board, a board in as much as which is playing an oversight role, like you have no role whatsoever, because you have a representative in that board, and that board is maybe even raising red flags in case of any. And you want to convince us, or rather me, that there is no role, and these are governance issues too. When then Dr. Mburu came here, from her submissions, there was an indication like there looks like there's breakdown on communications. Do you at any point have internally mini meetings between the state departments and that Ministry of Health, maybe to just engage? And finally, if surely you had no role in any of these issues, why were you then moved to the sports ministry? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to understand questions. The first question is like communication between us in the departments. The State Department of Medical Services and Public Health was working under the CS then, right? And whenever there was an issue of misunderstanding in terms of roles and responsibilities, we would meet together under the chairmanship of the CS, and we would iron them out, right? So that is how governments run. Even now, as I am in sports, we have two departments: youth affairs, the arts, and mine, which is sports, right? Whenever we have issues, the CS would sit us down and would iron them out. So on issues communication, that hierarchy usually works. The issue of my representative sitting in the board is true. I'm usually represented in the board on matters governance and oversight. And when you look at this issue, it happened within a very short period of time, and it was PS writing to giving specifications to KEMSA, and KEMSA management working on it, right? So therefore then, when management is still handling issues on procurement and everything else, and they have not been escalated to the level of the board, then my representative therefore then at that particular moment wouldn't have had anything to report to me about. Right? And then the third one is the issue you said, why was I moved to sports? And Chair, for me, you know, the appointing authority is the president. Let me put it the other way around. I come from a background where we look after cows and goats. And usually when I tell my employees to look after the cows, I don't normally tell them why. So sometimes I tell them go and look after the goats, sometimes go and look after the cows. So this one I might not be really sure why he moved me to sports.
Senator, is it yours? Another question? Senator Amida?
Chair, I feel so sad here that at times we are asking questions and maybe we may even look like fools, but let me quote this one on a PS. It was in this sitting the committee held on Tuesday, 6 June 2023. where we had the PS, Dr. Josephine Ulu, the former PS, State Department of Health and Professional Standards, Ministry of Health, that she was involved in the procurement, fell under, she was not involved, yes, she was not involved in the procurement. But then she was not involved in the procurement of LNMS, as KEMSA fell under the State Department of Medical Services, which was then headed by PS Engineer Peter Tum. Okay? Then again, she further, then Dr. Ramadan also, Terry, she also stated in her testimony that the Cabinet Secretary, MOH, had directed to only communicate with Honorable Peter Tum, Principal Secretary, State Department of Medical Services. So now, if you say you had no role, the PS has come and said it was Engineer Tum who was involved. Terry Ramadan says the CS directed that they can only communicate it to Engineer Tum. Engineer Tum is here with us today and he's saying, I had no role, it wasn't me. Who is fooling who? What are we doing here then? The engineer is here, Dr. Mulo is here. Dr. Mulo, of course, echoed the same words. It wasn't me, I had no role. Here we are. This was a testimony and it was put down.
Yes, yes. But maybe it was Senator Amita. Do you really believe Dr. Josephine Ulu didn't have a role, even after writing to KEMSA? And you know she tabled in this meeting. So I think we also need to analyze the documents once they are tabled so that we can do that. But yes, what this committee is grappling with, and I see my honorable members are still really wondering how our whole State Department that is supposed to work in synergy, even if the roles have been distinct, and we want to believe that this State Department normally has management meetings, that even after the procurement process was then terminated, PS, that your representative in the board did not even bother than to brief you that we have had this challenge in KEMSA, and as your representative, and KEMSA is directly under your State Department, although it overserves to all other, to the other State Department and even other agencies. Then maybe the question to put to you is, after all this was done, you know how much this matter has attracted public interest. Did your rep in the board then brief you of exactly what was happening in KEMSA? Because administratively then KEMSA reports to you. So did he brief you of what happened?
Chair, when this issue came about, like I said, there was this Global Fund letter that was sent to me. That is how information came. And then the rest, was on a roller coaster. We were being informed that there has been Global Fund now has come in and said we are not going to we are not now going to procure the nets by ourselves and that kind of thing. So now it is something that we are being reported when it has already happened. And how it happened is a problem. And I think that is then the reason why we've been called here to come and say why that tender was cancelled and the Global Fund now decided to procure for itself. So that is information that we all have after that happened. But before, Chair, I was not part and parcel of the procurement and therefore the bundling of that procurement that was reported to us after Global Fund. that they need. So, generally, what I'm saying, Chair, is that, and I want to go back to what the Senator Madam has said, is that usually there is paper trail on all this. If like I said earlier, for the procurement of HIV commodities, what happens is that my team comes up with specifications. And that the PS writes to forward those specifications to the department of KEMSA. And then KEMSA undertakes to do the procurement. Right? If, for instance, there is a problem and my team comes and says that we are buying the wrong thing because of 1, 2, 3, there will also be paper trail that will then point towards the direction of who wrote the letter to KEMSA to tell them to change from A to B. And therefore, then it will not be very difficult to know who did what, right? But for us as a department now, we are not involved in it because KEMSA was communicating with the State Department for Public Service for Professional Standards and Public Health.
Through the chair, just a clarification. So after what the CEO, the CEO actually commented that the CS directed them to communicate to you directly. Did you receive any communications regarding this?
No.
Senator Haji?
Just a follow-up question, Senator Desi asked you about communication in the ministry. I would just like to know, would it be your opinion that you had a cordial working relationship with your counterpart, the PS? Did you have a cordial working relationship during your tenure there at the Ministry of Health?
Senator Hesse?
Yes, that will be my final question. Since we actually started having the responses in this committee, most of the submissions which are being done paint a picture of no written evidences in any of the conversations key officials in the ministry are having. Like one would say, we met and discussed this, but there are no minutes, there is no documentation. Even at one instance, Dr. Mulwa there admitted to having sent a letter being written a letter, but he never received it. So we are discussing on matters which there is no evidence. You discuss with your colleague, but there is no evidence for the same. Engineer Tum, in as much as you are clearly saying your department had no role in this, but I think there is a failure generally in that whole ministry and even the department, because most of the issues being talked about, we have no evidence to see that meetings happened, people agreed. It's just by word of mouth. I really been getting disappointed because as a country, I think we have to make our systems work, and by having systems work is ensuring we document whatever issues we engage in so that we have the trail you are talking about. Right now, if you ask, no one is able to produce a document. They'll just say, oh, we'll table, but you'll never see that document. So, the public might actually think there's something we are deliberately covering from the Kenyans who are watching these inquiries. I don't know what you feel about that, but that's a lapse across. And anytime I mention this, I think it's just taken lightly, but for me, I take it seriously. Because as a country, we are talking about fighting corruption, and fighting corruption, we have to have a trail of documentation compelling everyone to take responsibility for their actions. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hesse. Senator Chimera. Yes, before you answer, we allow the the Senator to go on record.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Senator Raphael Chimera Munzagu. I apologize for conflict. I'm from Kwale County.
Thank you very much, Senator. PS.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Senator. My name is PS Tum, PS Sports now. Thank you, Chair. I think I have two questions. The first one is on my relationship with everybody else in the ministry. We've had all the relationships, and it's basically work related. And hence, I do not have issues in terms of working. But if anybody else had an issue outside within that framework of work, I may not be aware. And then number two is on Madam Senator, on the issue of paper trail. It's common knowledge that you issue instructions as a PS in writing. Anything that is verbal is not an instruction, neither is it actionable. And therefore, even on the procurement of anything that you wish to procure, what the system that government recognizes is that you explain it out in a letter, you give your instructions, the procurement is done, and a meeting is held, the minutes are confirmed. So outside that, then it means that we've been operating outside the law. Right. And when we talk about my department, for instance, the medical services, there wasn't anything that we did procure verbally. There isn't anything that we give instructions verbally. Right? And therefore, if you even left today your department, you will be able to come back and look at the kind of documentation that you put in place. Because, like you rightly said, the government works in perpetuity. It doesn't matter who is in the office, and therefore records are very, very, very important. That is why even Chair, in my submission, I've signed it, because then I can be held responsible for what I've said. So, I think that is what should happen. If it never happened, and then the issue is why, right?
Thank you very much, PS. Maybe one question to Dr. Mudo. Dr. Mudo, did you attend this meeting with Global Fund that then communicated their decision to terminate the procurement process and move it to the college to Wambo? Were you present in that meeting?
Chair, no.
Were you aware of that meeting?
Again, Chair, no. At the time, I said from the 19th of April 2023, I was no longer responsible for malaria program because now the ministry has been reorganized to reflect the two state departments. So at the time, I was no longer reporting to the two PSs. I was reporting to the PS, State Department of Medical Services only, and malaria was not in my portfolio. So I was not invited or was not aware of that meeting.
Finally, PS, one more question. When the then CEO of KEMSA, Mary Ramadhani, appeared, she also made a submission to this committee that part of the challenges KEMSA has had is that they are running on manual processes and somehow ICT processes that are not end-to-end. And the intention as an organization was to get an enterprise resource planning system that will then enable them to manage their procurement, their issuance, deliveries, and all those other things. And in her submission, she says the efforts to have that were actually frustrated by mutual aid. These are submissions that were made by the then CEO of KEMSA. KEMSA, as management, at any given time, make a request to the ministry or sort of authority to procure an ERP system for purposes of managing their processes.
Chair, this one I will rely mostly on my, if my memory serves me right, what the ministry had intended to do was to come up with a platform and a health information management system that would incorporate every player within itself, so that we are not having silo enterprises that will be working independently, because that would be costly, and at the same time it wouldn't have addressed that was required then by the whole healthcare sector. Right? And within that aspect of putting in place, and if they call it had that integrated health management system, it was then thought that we look at it holistically rather than do the silo procurement for each organization. Because the NHIF required one, NSSF, KEMSA also did require that. And what were we looking at that particular moment? We wanted a system that would then allow for portability of patient data. It would allow for us to be able to know the kind of healthcare facilities that we have, and very many other aspects of that. So for me, I don't think that was a frustration. It was just the thinking that would then put all that together. It would be cheaper, it would address the general need of e-health within that sector.
Honourable Senators, is there any other questions? Senator Timero, do you have any questions? Thank you very much. So I think with that, we want to thank you very much, PS, for appearing this committee and sharing light on the questions that the committee has raised. Should we need any further information, we shall definitely be communicating to you, but we want to thank you very much for appearing. So I think with that we can release you.
And let me take this opportunity also, Chair, to thank you most sincerely for having engaged me. I think I've clarified what I could. For those that were not very clear, like you rightly said, I'm available. I can come in anytime just to answer to it. Because we work as one government. Thank you, and may God bless you.
Thank you very much. Mumba, I don't know, next time we invite you as the WC of KEMSA, who will accompany you. Gibbs, thank you very much. I think, honourable members, we need to make progress.